Hello, I'm Pip Courtney. Welcome to Landline. Of all the species introduced to this country, you'd be hard-pressed to find one that's taken to its new home quite as effectively as the feral goat. The harsher the terrain, the more they like it. So much so, they've become public enemy number one in fragile, arid and semi-arid areas. And a warning, this story contains images that may distress some viewers.
Covering more than 630,000 hectares in a corner of the state's northwest, the Murray Sunset is Victoria's second largest national park. In the past, it was mined for salt and gypsum. It was also extensively grazed by cattle and sheep, but it was never cleared for cultivation. Its arid soils and harsh climate were its saviour. Regarded as too marginal to put under the plough, ultimately, this vast tract was declared a national park in 1991. It's a rare example of semi-arid woodland, but not everything that lives here is welcome.
It's going to take a long time before we can get these animals down to what we would call manageable levels.
The animal in question is the goat. Once a common domestic creature in these parts, goats have long run rampant in this harsh environment.
A lot of these goats out here are getting up to, 60, 80 kilo animals. They're quite large goats, as you guys have seen. But you only need one of those animals jumping up and down on a lot of our smaller shrubs out here, and they just do untold damage.
Feral goats have proven hard to control, so hard that several years ago, Parks Victoria embarked on a bold and unconventional strategy, the use of private shooters. 4 or 5 weekends during summer, a group of volunteers assembled at Underbull, the mallee hamlet closest to the National Park's southern boundary. A detailed briefing outlines the stringent and comprehensive safety conditions and the plan of attack.
We'll just hunt the southern boundary, I think, mainly all this weekend due to the amount of animals that are about. The program is to prevent environmental degradation in Murray Sunset National Park, as you all know.
I've got a Remington 308. This is a pump-action rifle. That's handy too because we've got to get those shots away quick.
Today, the conditions are in the hunter's favour.
Got a light wind, that'll help us with the scent. Creates a bit of a barrier for when we're walking around. It's just a lot quieter for us and the animals don't hear us.
It's made pretty hard to control the animals due to the amount of fuel reduction we burn, the inaccessibility of the place and the remoteness. Like, it's hard to, we can't get there. We know the goats are there. The bloody sand dunes out there are virtually straight up and down.
This is waterless country for most of the year, but summer evaporation renders the water in these salt lakes undrinkable. Goats can survive on succulent vegetation, but dry spells force them to move towards dams on farmland. The harvested wheat fields also prove an irresistible but very risky green pick. The lack of cover makes them a far easier target. A large mob of goats is sighted exactly where Ranger Robert McNamara suspected they'd be. Local landholders are always happy to see them removed. One hunter peels off to the north and picks off the leaders at long range. The remaining animals flee southwards into the range of the 3 concealed hunters. The ambush is fast, efficient and clinical. The tally is 34 goats.
It's another little Billy and Annie. This landowner will be happy with this, Winston, I reckon, because of these little lot not eating his property, and they just come out of the park. So excellent job, mate. Well done.
Thank you.
It's not so easy when the goats are in the scrub.
Would have had a lot of trouble there. The scrub's pretty thick and the goats can move under those mallees far better than and far quicker than what we can.
I'd hate to see goats coming onto my place, taking out half of my crop that I've put all that time and effort into growing, and the goats just come along and trample it down, and they don't care if you've got a fence there or not. They'll either go through it or under it. Yeah, so I think the farmers are very happy with what we're up to.
Shooting may seem a drastic and violent means of curbing the feral goat problem, but it wasn't a measure that was taken lightly. Where possible, Parks Victoria uses goat traps, like this one set up on adjoining private land. Here the goats are drawn to water and find themselves fenced in. But trapping is not a viable option in the vast, largely inaccessible Murray Sunset National Park. It's simply too hard to effectively check the traps. The movement of goats can be unpredictable, and at best it's only an option during the hot summer months when the goats are forced to move to find water. Nor is it feasible to utilise the carcasses of these animals. This region is simply too remote. So, after 3 trials over several years, Parks Victoria joined forces with the Sporting Shooters Association. The collaborative partnership began in late 2003, and as the program has become increasingly efficient, goat numbers have dropped dramatically.
It's been proven up here now. We knew it before, but it's actually been proven that shooting is the only way to cull these animals down to a realistic number. We'd like to cull them right out, but I really can't see that happening. But our aim is to always cull them right down to next to nothing if we possibly can.
Yeah, that big belly you've got there is just getting in the scrub line now.
We don't see it as a blood sport, really. We find it an important part of conservation, coming out here to get rid of these pest animals, feral animals, and it gives the native wildlife a fair chance.
People seem to have this adverse reaction to firearms. They're a tool that's used all the time by the farming community. Sporting shooters have been using them. There's target shooting right through to live animal shooting, as we do, culling feral animals. The farmers shoot their pests on their farms. It's just a normal part of life to us. We jump in a motor car and we drive 4 hours to go to the big city. People take 2 hours to get to work and they think nothing of it, and we think nothing of grabbing a firearm and going out and destroying an animal that's causing problems on the farm.
The Nil branch of the Sporting Shooters has carried out the work here. Since the program began, it has spent about $70,000 of its own money, but in return the shooters have gained valuable bush skills under the guidance of veteran ranger Robert Ock-McNamara.
A lot of these guys in the group have actually been hunters. They're not cardboard shooters, as they call themselves a lot of the time. So they actually have been hunters. So me, myself, being here for so long, I've been able to show the guys where we'll find these animals and how to track animals and how old the tracks and that sort of stuff are. So they've picked up other skills from us guys in the role as park rangers.
You've got to get to know the goats, their habits, and you've got to counteract all that. So, yeah, it's an ongoing thing. But without the rangers, it just doesn't work.
Well, I've shot a lot of goats even before this started, and since we've sort of come up here, we know a lot more about them and their movements and activities and what they eat, and yeah, it is a good learning curve for shooters.
We're up to 3,500 goats. We're just over the 3,500, and it's made a difference to the country, and if people want to see it, come up and have a look.
It may not sound like big numbers, but goats are very selective grazers, highly destructive in their habits, and this is a fragile, arid environment.
Well, Robert, I suppose a typical example of goat damage.
Yeah, you can see where the goats have been here and what we call pawed this down and broke it off with their front feet. What they usually do is only take a few leaves off here and leave that as a result of the typical damage that goats do to this Verrucosa pine.
And sort of ring bark it also.
Also at the back here you can see where they've actually eaten the bark off the back of this branch here. You know that the goats are getting dry and they're getting moisture from these plants by taking the bark off the actual tree there.
And this whole hillside has changed in the time you've known it. Like, this is a rare plant now, this one here.
Yeah, the silver-eye broombush here, that was plentiful right across these hill ranges here. Due to large numbers of goats that were here, this is the only plant that I've managed to find here today whilst we've been here.
And nonetheless, there are some signs that it is recovering. There are some other younger trees here that weren't here a few years ago.
Yes, we can. The small Berricosa scrub pine here behind you, for example, you can actually see that it's actually growing seed on it now, whereas you know, a lot of these trees usually ended up like this one here through goat damage that it never got a chance to set seed.
After 2 mild summers and wetter than average years, the park, now with far less grazing pressure from goats, is springing back to life. So too is the wildlife.
This is a malleefowl mound here that in recent years has had a lot of trouble with feral goats by clambering all over the top of it. They wander across the top of the mound here and just keep removing the sand off the top of it, and the eggs that are in that mound there have got to be constantly kept at 23 or 24 degrees, so hence that's where we have our problems with feral goats.
As a ground nesting bird, the malleefowl is easy prey for a range of predators. Goats love to climb, and once on top, can smash the eggs incubating within the mound.
The countryside out here is fantastic. Over the 8 years it's grown on us tremendously. It's been really great, and the native animals, it's all coming back. We can see that we're actually making a big difference out here now, and we're coming back to a better looking country now than what we had 8 years ago.
Coordinates.
Yeah, the 6th one.
Yeah.
That was 542.
229.
As the shooters go about their work, they record details about their quarry.
Every time we head out in the bush, we take our paperwork with us. We use the GPS to advise where we've been. When we do the shoot, we check the animal off, and sex, size, all those sort of things are recorded. And yes, we can use that data to enable us to be better prepared.
Horn on the wall. Another good 10 big billies taken out of the park that won't do any more damage. These are the ones that like to bust down all those bigger branches on the trees, and they're the ones that do the most of damage, these big fellas.
They're the good ones. They're the ones to get, mainly, the bigger ones.
We like taking these bigger, heavy ones out because for the destruction that they do.
By the end of the weekend, the tally is impressive.
11 here and
11 here.
At least 10, 12 back there. 220 odd.
Yeah, 220 we got in 2 days so far. So, yeah, no, really good for the park. And, yeah, excellent.
Sporting shooters would like to see this partnership become the blueprint for a national effort to curb feral animals.
Australia-wide, it's a big problem. Yes, you'll drive around in the outback and you'll see donkeys and camels and all sorts of weird things that shouldn't be there, and it's a big country, and you know, you can't hire a person to go and do it, so I think you've got to really work on volunteers and your local hunters to take them out. Yeah, it's a big problem.
In this park at least, the results are evident.
I would say many thousands of animals were here initially, and then when the guys have come on, you know, between the two groups, Mildura and Nil, they've taken out over 4,000 animals now in that 7 years. So, you know, that's been a monumental effort from those guys.
Well, they're certainly getting harder to get. There's just less out there, I believe. Now we come down to the stage where the cunning ones are left. We've got to deal with them now. We've got to try and find them and pin them down.
You can't slacken off now. Even if the numbers do get down and we're not getting as many, they'll breed up very quick. It doesn't take them long at all because the goats either have twins or triplets, and they breed twice a year, so it doesn't take long at all for them to breed up. So yes, keep at it.
The way things are at present, obviously things are tight, and we haven't got the personnel to do it ourselves. So without our volunteers, we wouldn't be where we're here. You know, like the park is today, due to those volunteers, especially our sporting shooters. It does depend on a lot of trust, and you must, you know, have goodwill amongst one another for these programs to be a success.
you get out in the scrub, you're out with your mates, and you're doing a lot of good for the public. It's just great, you know.